law enforcement officials are looking into the conduct of two longtime Providence police officers. They were caught on video smashing a handcuffed man's face into the ground over the weekend. Around 9:30 p.m. Sunday, 21-year-old Armando Rivas was arrested by Captain Stephen Gencarella and Lieutenant Matthew Jennette at the city's Indiana Point Park following 4th of July celebration after he left his parked vehicle unattended in the travel lane. Police say officers struck Rivas in the head, handcuffed him, and took him to the ground after he resisted arrest. Video obtained by local GoLocalProv shows Rivas was handcuffed and lying face down when one officer grabbed his head, smashed it into the pavement. State Attorney General Peter Neronha and the Providence Police Department Office of Professional Responsibility have opened an investigation into Rivas' arrest. So let's go to this story. I feel like it's Groundhog Day, folks. I mean, how often do we either hear about these stories on the news if they're reported? We certainly hear about, and certainly you know, when it comes to social media or conversations, you just had like conversations we're having today on Roland Martin Unfiltered or in other platforms in terms of how people are unfortunately being treated by law enforcement throughout the United States. So let's start with Robert. Once again, another civil rights issue. Robert, what are your thoughts about this case?
You know, I find it amazing that we're about 10 years into the cell phone video era, and this is still how police act. Think about how they were acting before there were cameras everywhere, before there were body cams, before there were cell phone videos, before there were, you know, surveillance cameras everywhere. We're only seeing the tip of the iceberg because for every case like this that we see, you can walk into any jail in the country pretty much if you're in a major city. And if you look at some of those people who got arrested over the weekend, they look like they went through an MMA match by the time they get into custody. And we have to start changing police culture in this country, going back to the previous story, because the only way to do that is to allow these people to sue the officers individually. You have to take away qualified immunity. The taxpayers shouldn't be paying for those two cops beating the hell out of that black man. Those officers need to pay those off. They need to be fired. You need to be able to take their pensions. You need to be able to take their house, their car, their boat, their kids' college fund, their vacations. Take all that stuff away from them. I bet you the next generation of cops will decide, well, maybe it ain't worth it to get this last lick in because he made me have to actually, you know, do some work and exert myself in trying to arrest him. There used to be this joke in Atlanta on Mondays called the Grady tax, where police officers had to chase you anywhere. If they had to do a foot pursuit, you were not taken to Rice Street. They would take you directly to Grady because you would need to recover before you could even go to trial, because that was just simply standard operating procedure back in the Red Dog days. And many police departments in the country still feel that way, even though they know they may or may not be recorded at this point in time. And the only way to change this is personal liability for officers. There's no other, desk duty is not going to do it. The city paying out money is not going to do it. You have to make the officers pay out individually, bankrupt a couple of these officers who like to beat people, and you'll get fewer officers liking to beat people.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I want to go to you, Scott. This is right in your wheelhouse. So Robert highlights some good points. How do we prevent law enforcement from these behaviors?
Robert, I would agree with you, Robert, that if you start hitting their pocketbooks and their pensions, you get less officers or better government conduct. But that doesn't seem to be the case in regard to police brutality cases against black people. It doesn't. You're right. We're 10, maybe 12 years into videotapes and surveillance, and black people just keep getting beat up. Black and brown people keep getting beat up by officers. We've had high-profile trials. We have high-profile prosecutions. We've done as criminal justice system done everything there is to do in regard to the prosecution of bad police officers. We get better training. We got all these things. They know, the police know you're watching, we're watching, and it doesn't matter whether it's in Maine or whether it's in California, Illinois, Florida. Black people are subject to being brutalized by police across the country post George Floyd. That's your phenomena. They know they're being watched, and they lie and they cheat and they steal and they do whatever it takes to avoid it, even though they have body cameras. That, to me, that's the phenomena, without a doubt. Now, if you go back to that video, and I do this with Roland all the time, this suspect is under control. Now, he may have resisted, but there are a lot of people that resist. Police are trained to bring down a suspect that is resistant. What was he struggling with the police for? Who knows? But it was a nonviolent act on his part. He left his car running, right? They pulled him out. They were going to arrest him for resisting arrest. The stop was because he left his car there. There's no anger management factor in policing. It should be. But they not only escalated it, they clearly didn't de-escalate it. The two of them are struggling with this guy. They have him under control. There's absolutely no reason why they don't pick him up and put him in the car. Instead, they bang his head on the ground because they don't see us. We don't matter to them, right? You talk about what the police, you talk about the Grady cats. Let me tell you something. In New York, when I was a prosecutor, you better not make the police run. They tell you, don't make me run. Don't make me run. He's a runner. He's a runner. And they would chase you, and they take you to Bellevue. Because once they caught you, if you ran, your ass was going to get beat. That used to be fundamental. I'm sorry. I was a prosecutor for 5 years in Manhattan. I would prosecute or dismiss these cases all the time. And so you can call it training. I think you shouldn't be entitled to have a police officer's job, that you ought to have a psychological test. Are you prone to be racist? Are you prone to escalate? All these tests psychologically that they can do. And that should determine whether you can have a gun and a badge with a flag on your sleeve of your uniform. We don't do enough of that. Because those two shouldn't have been there. They shouldn't be police officers.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for highlighting those points, Scott. And, you know, it's interesting in terms of what you and Robert had to say, growing up in Philadelphia. I mean, you interact with law enforcement. You never know if things can go bad really quickly. And that's in any jurisdiction in the United States, particularly when it comes to black men.
Yeah.
So, Lauren, I want to go to you because, like I said, these are stories that seem to happen daily. And look, your colleagues highlighted that before video cameras, if we go back pre-1960s, we had a lot of that a lot of civil rights workers being beaten black and white. Prior to that time, we know decades of black folks, black and brown folks dealing with these kind of issues relating to law enforcement. What are your thoughts about this particular case?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this since the Civil Rights era. In fact, the march on to Selma was started with the murder of Jimmy Lee Jackson. Yeah, Jimmy Lee Jackson. It started with a police brutality incident. And Malcolm X talked about police brutality all the time. We've been talking about this forever. And it is true. I mean, it is amazing to think about the fact that more than just the fact that we've had video around for 10 years or quality video because of the, advent of the cell phone camera, we've had cops do stuff with the video rolling, watching the person roll the video. I mean, with Eric Garner, Daniel Pantaleo and all those cops that were around him, they saw the guy standing there filming the video. George Floyd. I assume those cops saw the lady that was standing there that won the special Pulitzer, right? I'm sure they saw her standing there rolling the video. So what's actually going on here is that they think they're right. They think what they're doing is right. They think what they're doing is there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. So there's a bigger problem here, obviously, than having enough evidence to verify police brutality. I mean, there's a camera on every street corner now. Half of these arrests that the cops make in New York are made because they could just follow somebody with a public camera, to their destination at this point. So obviously, the problem is not cameras. And what we see, too, in a lot of these jurisdictions is they have no problem just making the payout. Now they're just making the payouts. Oh, you want $2-3 million bucks? We'll just pay that. The other thing I think is interesting, too, with policing is that once the heat got on after George Floyd was murdered, you saw a lot of cops resign from police work. It was almost as if, oh, wait a minute, if I can't just do this with impunity, I don't want to be a cop anymore. I thought that was a little bit strange and a little bit telling. I actually think it's good to see people leave policing if, in fact, they think that that's a problem. Like, if you think that it's okay what happened to George Floyd to the point where you say to yourself, well, gee, I don't want to be a cop anymore because if I've got to be held to that standard, I got to leave, then you probably should not be in police work. I mean, give me a break. Now, the guy that I'm dating is a federal police officer, and I have to say their level of training is extremely high, and their level of, who they allow onto the force is really high. So they are not just doing psychological checks, which, of course, most departments do, but they have a pretty high standard for federal police officers, which is why I suspect we don't see a whole lot of federal police officers in the news for nonsense like we just saw in the video. It's usually smaller departments. It's usually younger cops. Unfortunately, the Jayland Walker incident, it seems like a bunch of younger cops were involved in that. But, if that doesn't show you that there's a double standard, we as black people don't need to be shown that there was a double standard. Obviously, there's a double standard, right? Jayland Walker was a DoorDash driver, got shot 60 times, and he's running away from the police. So he's actually decreasing the threat by running away from the police. He's not running toward them. And all this stuff about he's got a gun in the car, okay, whatever. It is open carry. I know we all understand that Ohio is open carry. Obviously, Ohio apparently is not open carry for African Americans. The law is apparently different. When we open carry, everybody wants to bring up, oh, he had a gun in the car. So I guess it's not open carry for black people, but it's open carry for everybody else. This lunatic in Highland Park, Illinois, had a gun in the car. The video of them apprehending him, and what's crazy there, of course, is these cops enter the scene knowing that they're going to be dealing with a person who likely murdered 6 people with a high-powered rifle that morning. So you enter the scene knowing that. And I totally understand cops with their gun in their hand when they're trying to apprehend somebody that they know have murdered that many people. Buffalo, same thing. They apprehended a person that they knew just murdered 10 people in a grocery store. Okay, so the idea that you can apprehend those people safely without incident, and you can't do that with Jayland Walker, of course, tells us we already know as black people, which is that the standards are completely different and the treatment is completely different for us. We've known that for 300, 400 years, so there's no surprise there. The question is, what do we do about it? And I do think, lawsuits, legality, making people pay for it, money is all great and fine, but somebody's life is over still at the end of the day. So somewhere in there, I do think the standards have to be high for policing, because I do think we do see on the federal level that standards are very high, and it's very rare to see a federal police officer involved in this type of thing. So there we go. I mean, it's an issue that is keeps going on. We keep seeing these videos. We got to get to a point where we find a real solution for it.
Yeah. Lauren, you're right. Since first enslaved Africans arrived here, over 400 years ago, we've been dealing with these same issues. And you highlighted earlier in terms of impetus for a lot of fight for civil rights. And even during the 1960s, voting rights, voting, et cetera, passed. And you think that decades have followed President Obama's election. Some people assume we're making progress, but as black folks know in this country, that the fight for for fairness is ongoing. So it doesn't stop at any point. It is for us it's a continuation of the same unfortunate cycle of violence we saw in this video.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Love our new Alexa.
It's a Buick.
Yeah, Alexa.
Buick.
Alexa.
It's a Buick.
It's an Alexa. It's a Buick. It's an Alexa. Coach, that's a Buick. That's an Alexa.
The Buick Enclave with available Alexa built-in.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?